Hey everyone, Boardgame Brody here with Meeple Mountain. I was sent a beautiful copy of Empyreal, Spells, and Steam, along with the deluxe components by Level 99 Games. Empyreal, Spells, and Steam is a fantasy train game where you will be building networks of rails for your trains and using magic to set up a delivery system to pick up certain resources and deliver them to the desired cities. In the game, you will be upgrading your crew and increasing your network across the board, setting up for your company to win awards. Whenever a player collects a required number of demand tiles, or there's no train cars left for them to place on the board, the game ends and the score will then be calculated. The player with the most points at that time wins the game. The game is a mid-weight tableau builder style train game that uses a modular board, card drafting, variable player powers, and a pickup and delivery mechanic inside a rich fantasy world. You'll be playing the game in the world of Indians, which is the world created by Level 99 Games, which also is the world used in BattleCon, Argent, and Pixel Tactics. You will start to set up the game by building the map. Depending on the player count, you will use certain sides of certain boards to set up the game. And the most important thing is that you will need to make sure that you have a total of 6 cities, with each one being represented by a different color. Resources will be placed out on each of the terrain hexes that matches its resource type. Charisma is purple slush found in the deep drilling operations. Earlite is blue metal liquid that causes spatial distortions in nearby areas. Heartwood consists of shards of the heart of ancient trees said to contain the soul of that tree. Hylatine is dried leaves of a desert plant that contains healing properties. Ritherwhite, known as the wizard's herb, is used to heighten mental acuity. And lastly, vital silver, a dull, silvery white metal found deep within the mountains. Each city will have a city stand placed on it, and the demand tiles are placed into the stand depending on the player count. These demand tiles are worth the stated points on the tile, but you will need to earn them by dropping off the desired resources to this city. And you'll only be able to take the demand tile that represents the number of resources that you are dropping off. So just know that when setting up the game, when you have more players, that means that you're going to have more available demand tiles per city. Spell cards will be very important in the game, and you will set up the spell card market by shuffling all the tiles, and you will place 6 of them out face up to form that market. You will then set up the specialists. Specialists can help give added bonuses, making your turn more efficient and expedite your plans. To set up the specialist market, each type will be shuffled separately, and you will deal out a stack for each type equal to the number of players plus 1. Each stack is placed in the specialist tray, and the others will be returned to the box, as you won't be using them for this game. The start player is determined by the last person who rode a train, and they are given the start player token. In reverse turn order, starting with the last player, everyone will choose a company, as well as one of the captains within that company, or a wild captain. Players take the folio for their company, as well as the tray that contains their trains, the captain board, and the conductor pawn. And they will also have 5 mana crystals to start with. To set up the map so that each player has some trains on there to start, you will go in clockwise order, and players place 2 of their train cars on the map. The first one will go into an unoccupied hex that matches their terrain shown on their folio. And the second one will go on an adjacent unoccupied hex of any type, of any terrain except for the wasteland. When setting up the game, you can modify the game depending on how you want to play it. So if you want a more friendlier way to play the game, then there is a list of captains, engineers, surveyors, station masters, and even spell cards that can be removed from your game. Also, depending on how challenging you would like the game, you can add awards to the game. These give you extra points at the end of the game by being the best at a certain aspect compared to all other players. Tiles are shuffled and 2 are dealt out face up. Another way that you can pick these awards is by shuffling them and dealing out the number of awards equal to the number of players plus 2. and then in turn order, each player will eliminate one of the rewards until there are only 2 remaining. If you don't know how you like playing the game yet, change things up each time that you play so that you can soon figure out how you want to customize the game to your liking. A game consists of players taking turns and continuing around clockwise, one player taking a turn at a time. During your turn, you can activate specialists. Then you will either perform the Administrate action or the Move and Activate action. Whenever your conductor reaches the end of the line, you will then be able to take the Deliver action and start your conductor back at the start. Play continues until a player collects the required number of demand tiles to end the game. 6 in a 2 or 3 player game, 5 in a 4 player game, and 4 in a 5 to 6 player game. Also, for players who want a longer game, they can add in 1 to the demand tile limit needed to trigger the game end. Alright, now let's go over these actions a little bit more specifically. Let's start with the Activate Specialist. So this is an optional action, but needs to be done at this beginning point of your turn if you're going to activate any of them. So Specialists come in 4 different types: Captains, Engineers, Surveyors, and Station Masters. At the start of the game, you will only have access to your Captain, but as you upgrade your company, you will gain the others. When activating Captains or Engineers, you will flip over their tile showing that you have exhausted them, and you will perform their bonus, whatever's listed on that tile. When you do the Administrate action, you will then be able to refresh these tiles again to use again. Now, Surveyors are extremely powerful and can only be used once per game. But again, when used, they will be flipped over and stay flipped over. Station Masters can be activated each turn, but they are not ever flipped over. Some of them have passive abilities that can be used multiple times in a turn, while others have kind of a one-time effect that you can perform during this phase. You can use any number of specialists and can activate them in any order that you would like. The next step is you will take one of the main actions, and you will either choose to Administrate or Move and Activate. Let's begin with the Administrate action first. So the Administrate action allows you to do 3 actions in its own action. So first you will reclaim mana. This allows you to take all of your spent mana back onto your folio to use for future use. Each time you're using this, you will take one of your mana and place it off the board. So when you reclaim it, you're just putting all that mana that you took off the board and putting it back on to use again. Some of the specialists and spell cards actually have this mana icon with a number, which means that you can reclaim some mana on other turns without having to take this Administrate action, but this is the main way to do it. The next action is to refresh your Captain and Engineer tiles face up to use again. And the last action in the main action is to gain a spell card from the market and place it in your rail yard. If at any time there are only 2 spell cards out in the market, then you will discard them and deal a new market of 6 new spell cards. When placing your newly acquired spell card, then you can place it in any column. But you will need to completely fill in your second row of your rail yard before placing a spell card in the third row. Spell cards cannot be moved after they're placed unless specified by an effect. You can, however, cover your printed company spell cards with new ones, but only once you have all empty spaces filled. Now that's the Administrate action. So now let's talk about the Move and Activate action. In this action, you must move your conductor at least 1 space, but you may move it up to 4, paying extra mana to do so. The conductor will always move from left to right till it gets to the end of the line, which at that point you will be placed back at the start. So mana is very valuable when manipulating what row and how many spell cards that you can activate. Moving your conductor 1 space is free, but moving it 2 spaces it'll cost 1 mana, 3 spaces will cost 3 mana, and 4 spaces will cost 6 mana. When stopping your conductor, you will then be able to activate the spell cards below. Each space can contain 1, 2, or 3 spell cards, depending on where you placed them previously. These spell cards will all be in the column beneath the conductor at this point, and you can choose to activate them in any order, but you can only activate each one once. Now, activating the first spell card is free. Activating 2 of them costs 1 mana, and activating all 3 of them costs 3 mana. Some spell cards also have an additional cost of mana that you must pay to use that spell card, and any mana gained from an activation cannot be used to pay for additional activations in that same turn. Many of these spell cards will allow you to build track, expanding your company's presence and helping you reach cities. Others have unique effects. Before buying a spell card, you will just need to understand what that spell card does. And if you have a hard time understanding from the icons, you can visit the rulebook and it explains every single one of these. Now, as I mentioned before, whenever your conductor reaches the end of the line, it must stop and it actually makes a delivery. So then you can choose to upgrade your company and move your conductor back to the start. When you deliver, you will actually then choose one of the cities that is network adjacent to you. You can pick any number of goods of that city's colors that is in your network and add them to your folio. If you take enough resources in that single delivery to be eligible for a demand tile, then you will take the appropriate tile and place it on your folio. You can take any one demand tile for which you qualify for. Next, you will get an upgrade, whether you made a delivery on this turn or not. You will choose one of the 3 available upgrades. 1, you can gain mana and reclaim mana, so you will take a new mana crystal and you will add it to your folio in the available mana area, and then you will reclaim all spent mana that is off the board and place it back on. 2, you can gain specialists and refresh your captain and engineer. You'll take the stack of specialists of a type that you don't have and that you want to acquire, and you will choose one of them that you would like to have. Of course, when you take this action first, you have more available to you, but as other players take them, you will have less options. After taking one of them, you will return the remaining back face down to the market, and you will add your specialist to your folio. Don't forget to refresh your captain and engineer by flipping them back over if needed. 3 is gain a spell card twice. You will be able to add 2 spell cards to your rail yard, of course obeying the placement rules. After completing your upgrade, return your conductor back to the start track. The game contains a lot of game effects that helps you with your goals, helps you expand your rail network, and giving you added bonuses to set up for an amazing turn. If you are uncertain about a certain effect in the game, then the rulebook references everything, every single tile, and it gives you a great understanding on what the effect does exactly. Some of these effects might be placing a wasteland tile onto the map, destroying the resources on it, or building a track which allows you to place a train car on a network adjacent hex of a given terrain. It's good to know that a single hex can hold up to 3 different train cars, so you will be sharing spaces on the board with other players. You cannot, however, build or move a train into a hex where you already have a train. Yet certain effects in the game may let an opponent move one of your trains into a hex where you already have one. And also, a train car can never occupy a city. You will always be building your track on a network adjacent hex unless the global icon is shown, and in that case you might be placing your train anywhere on the map. Now, in order to expand your network and get to faraway locations, you can transfer. This is not its own action, but it's always available to you when you're adding your train cars. A transfer lets you skip certain terrain hexes to reach other areas faster, and you can perform any number of transfers of any different type each time that you build track, but each transfer also costs mana. Transfers through cities cost 3 mana, transfers through wasteland costs 4 mana, and a transfer through a competitor costs 2 mana. This might not be desired at the beginning of the game, but there will possibly be times where you will need to do this. The game ends once a company has collected the required number of demand tiles, or if any company runs out of train cars to place on the map. You will then finish the round making sure each player gets the same number of turns, and after that, each player will make one final delivery. This time, however, it's done in reverse order, starting with the last player, and this final delivery is not like a normal turn. Players will not be able to use specialists or move the conductor, but you can still earn demand tiles if your delivery is eligible for one. You will then total your victory points by gaining 1 point for each good you delivered, gaining the listed victory points on each demand tile, and gaining 6 points for the player who best fulfilled each award tile. Second place will get 4 points, and if playing with more than 4 players, you will get 2 points for third place. After counting up points, the player with the most victory points wins the game. If there is a tie in total victory points, then whoever delivered the most total goods wins. The 3 things I think this game offers over others is first, the game takes a train game, which can be very long and heavy in complexity, and gives us a mid-weight, faster version of what's out there. Second, the game gives you so many different ways to customize how you want to play the game. Want to make it longer? Well, go ahead. Add an extra demand tile rule in it. Want to make it friendlier? Well, let's take out some of this stuff so it's not as mean. And then the third thing is the game takes a theme that's been done many times before and adds so much life into it with tons of variation. What I mean by this is all the added specialists can change the game and the way that you play the game. Do you want to know how many specialists are in this game? 51 specialists. This causes games to be crazy different each time. How many spell cards? 67. These tiles form your actions and how you add to your network. How many different companies are there that you can be? 6. This game is definitely going to be different each time that you play it. All the added potential of use to different tiles in the game causes such a large amount of variation that the game doesn't ever get old. Level 99 Games also loves to produce added content to all their games. They never die. Their games never die. They refresh the games and keep them breathing. So don't worry about this being left on everyone's shelves with no one talking about it, because more and more variation and hopefully added mechanics and tricks will be added to the game. And this game will stay breathing through the years. Now, I like how the resources stay on the map until that you take that deliver action to deliver them to the city. Now, this can cause very tense moments as players compete with each other to possibly deliver the same resources. Those resources that you might be sharing or next to all other players with are not yours until you take that deliver action and take them off the board into your folio. Players can at any moment pay a lot of their mana and move their conductor all the way down to the track, or a player can use any of their specialists to help them do similar actions. Keep your eyes peeled. The board becomes a battle royale where players are racing for these demand tiles, manipulating train cars of other opponents, and expanding their networks far and wide on the map. I absolutely love the way they design the rail yard and how you add the train tiles to this board in a way to maximize current and future turns. Now, do you place all these tiles together to set up a huge turn where you can pay lots of your mana to do so? Or do you spread the tiles out to make a more consistent path to victory? Not only is it about the placement, but also the type. Or more importantly, the synergy between the type and its placement. Ultimately, the game has great aspects to it, and the only possible negative aspect I can find so far is that there truly is so much stuff in the game that it might intimidate you to get it to the table. Or it might make you think that it's longer or more complex than what it really is. So you need to come join the fantasy world of Indians, building your railway tracks, building your rail tracks, and delivering these great fantasy resources in Empyreal Spells and Steam by Level 99 Games. Again, this is Boardgame Brody. I hope you enjoyed this video. Stick around and check out some other board game reviews to see what you might want to get to the table.